Hello, so as you may know, I am now 2 years through my 3-year English degree, and recently I was on Sauna's channel, the lovely Books and Quills here on YouTube, and she recently made a video talking about the books that she didn't get to read at university. They were on her reading list and she just couldn't do it. English students, you'll feel the pain. We can't read all the books, and so she's going to revisit some of those books and read them. And I have a little list of books that I didn't manage to read, but at this point in summer, I really don't want to be picking those up. I want to read books that are really far away from university books for a few months, but I decided that I would share with you my 5 favourite books that I studied this year at university over 2 semesters, over 6 modules of English literature classes. I'm going to try and do this in chronological order, which means we start here in 1818 with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. I had read a baby version of this book when I was about 11, so I knew the basic story. I just love the gothic setting of this book. I love how horrifying it is and that you just can't look away and that you can't put this book down even though you can see where it's going. So I was studying this novel among the romantic poets, Byron and Shelley and Keats and all those fun guys, and this was a really cool contrast, and I think I wrote an essay about this, which was comparing it to one of Percy Shelley, who was Mary Shelley's husband. I compared this book to one of his poems, which was fun. Doesn't that sound like fun? Even if you don't read this book or don't have any desire to read it, you should read up on Mary Shelley because she was just such a really interesting person and so clever, and I wish that she'd written many more novels because I would read every single one twice. Skipping forward a little bit to 1860, this is Charles Dickens' Great Expectations, and this is the Oxford World's Classics edition. I have about 5 of these now and I just love how they look together on my shelf. They're lovely. Charles Dickens to me represents a time in my childhood when I had a teacher who loved reading Oliver Twist to us, and we would go to a local theatre and we'd watch a production of Oliver Twist. And at Christmas I would watch A Christmas Carol and Oliver Twist. As far as reading Dickens goes, I've never had a particular desire to read his entire works because some of them are really long. But I did love Great Expectations. Again, I knew the story from some kid version or adaptation, and I watched the movie that came out last year, the Helena Bonham Carter version, and I really loved that. It's actually on Netflix if you want to watch it. So I was really excited to read this and I was really determined to get it finished before my lectures on it. It's about 450 pages. If you don't know the story, Pip is a young boy in Kent who lives with his sister and her husband, who's a blacksmith, and he meets this very interesting haunted woman named Miss Havisham, who's just sitting there in her wedding dress and has been for quite some time. And he uncovers his great expectations that he has been given a fortune by a mysterious benefactor and he's going to move to London and see his great expectations unfold. He's going to become a gentleman. I think Pip is a great character. I think this book is full of really great characters. I feel like they're not as caricature-y as a lot of Dickens characters can be. So if you want to get into reading Dickens, I would recommend this as a great starting point. It's a really good story, and though it is long, it will keep you reading and you'll get used to his style, and then you might be able to branch out to some of the longer novels, which I haven't done yet, but maybe I will. What century am I in? I'm going to skip to poetry now to Emily Dickinson. This is the Everyman's Poetry edition. It's some selected poems. I didn't study from this book. I studied Dickinson's poetry from this book, but this one is heavy and this one is a lot prettier. So I'm going to show you this one, and it has all the most important poems. I studied Dickinson as part of my introduction to American writing class, and you can't think of American writing without thinking of Emily Dickinson. She was a genius in terms of poetic form. Her poems are really easy to read because they're really short, but she's able to pack so much meaning and so much force into these really short, really simple poems, and I could just read them forever. They're all online. You can go and go crazy if you want to get into Emily Dickinson, and there's a really good crash course video on her as well if you want to know more about her. Also, I just noticed that this book was £3, so I'm going to try to find a link and I'll put it in the description if you want a bargain of joy. Travelling back across the Atlantic to 1890, The Picture of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. If you've been on my channel for a while, you'll know that this was already one of my favourite books, but to study it last semester I had to pick up the Norton Critical Edition, which is really good because it has loads of notes and reviews and criticism and all that good stuff. Oscar Wilde was a genius, a very photogenic, very well-dressed genius who knew he was a genius, but a genius nonetheless. This book is so incredibly well written. I will never tire of reading. If you're not familiar with the story, Dorian Gray is a young man living in London, and his friend Basil, who is a painter, paints a portrait of him. Then this really weird thing happens where Dorian no longer ages or changes, and any things that he does that may have an effect on one's body no longer happen to him, but they happen to the painting. And it's such a shame that at this stage I only get to study books like this for a week and then move on to the next one, because I could talk about this book forevermore. My last favourite book was first staged in 1953. It is a play called Waiting for Godot by the Irish playwright Samuel Beckett. I absolutely adore this cover. It's the Faber and Faber edition, and I just Most people are familiar with Waiting for Godot even if they haven't seen it or read it, because it is parodied so much. All that happens in this play is that the two main characters wait for Godot. It's what's known as a tragicomedy, and it's also a black comedy. The humour is very dark, and I found it really funny, which might say a lot about me. I definitely plan to see this on stage the next time it's being shown somewhere locally. Nothing happens, that's not really a spoiler, is it? Nothing happens, but it's wonderful, and it plants this little seed within you and you can't really stop thinking about it. I'm going to continue studying Irish writing when I go back in September. So hopefully this will not be the last I see of Samuel Beckett, because I find him really interesting. I find his writing very Irish, yet this play was first written in French and then translated into English. So all sorts of layers of fun things that English students just love talking about. Apologies if this was a really fast, sweeping overview of 5 books and you probably don't know more about them than you did when the video started. I will put links to all the books I mentioned in the description. If you've read any of them, I would love to know what you thought. And if you've been studying literature this year, I'd love to know what your favourite book was. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon. Goodbye!